Namaste, my name is Ojasvi Chandok and I welcome you to Series 4 of the Festival of Bharat. We are a platform that believes in having open and civilized discourse. And today here with us, we have Prasiddha ji. Prasiddha ji is an Ayurvedic counselor and content creator and has her own YouTube channel. Prasiddha ji, namaste and thank you so much for joining us.
Namaste. Thank you so much for having me. Excited to talk with you guys.
Prasiddha ji, my first question to you is, can you tell us about your spiritual journey? What is it about Hinduism or Sanatana Dharma that really made you embrace it?
Yes, so about 6 years ago now, I came to India for the first time and I really fell in love with Hinduism there in person and when I was immersed in the Hindu lifestyle at a program with my guru and in deep processes and rituals, visiting temples, embracing the entire lifestyle and learning a lot about the whole philosophy of Hinduism. And for the first time I felt like everything I believed growing up was really it was a real path within Hinduism. And I felt that there was so much authenticity in the embodiment of, especially with nonviolence as a main principle of life, which I just really resonated with, being somebody who was always called to, protect the environment and animals since, from a young age. I really resonated with that aspect of Hinduism. And once I experienced the healing power of its sciences in my life, with yoga and meditation, and even just the actual principles and beliefs that are so empowering to the individual, I I just I was so drawn into it and understood that it was this lifestyle of living enlightenment that really allows us to experience oneness with all of life. And that's just that in a nutshell.
That's really great. I mean, it's so amazing. And following up on that question, and I'm not sure whether you heard of it or not, but a princess from Java, Indonesia, which is the world's largest Muslim nation, she recently readopted her original faith and adopted the Sanatana Dharma or Hinduism. And like this story from Indonesia, many people have in various different parts of world who were not originally from this dharma have sort of adopted it as their own. And how would you sort of explain this trend? How would you explain people choosing Sanatana Dharma out of their own will and adopting it as their own dharma?
I really think that dharmic paths and faiths are the future of religion and spirituality. I'm not just saying that as a Hindu now, but from what I've observed and studied after my entire life of really immersing myself in different religions and researching them
Mhm.
and really getting to the depth of them, I feel like the way our world is evolving and society is evolving consciously, we no longer resonate with these moralistic or black and white traditions that seemed to not be matching with the way we're growing as humanity, and are are not about direct connection. And I think that the dharmic paths are very much centered in direct connection with the divine, and that recognition that we are that same consciousness. There is not a separation.
Mhm.
And that that type of philosophy and intertwining with modern day science, starting more and more to be in alignment with these same principles that have been explained in the Vedas for thousands and thousands of years, I think just gives a lot of credibility to the cosmic science of it. And as I'm sure most of us who live this faith understand, it's not really limited to the term of religion, but it's so much more than that, right? It's this yeah, cosmic science and lifestyle of really understanding ourselves in the universe. So I think that that is why so many people are really when they're seeking to find out who they are, why they're here, and all of these things, I think that Hinduism provides a really big range of explanations for all of that give a lot of, powerful context for people no matter where they're from.
Right. Prasiddha ji, I think you've partly covered this already in your answer, but you spoke about how you've done your research and sort of immersed yourself in a lot of religions before choosing Sanatana Dharma. But what is the difference between Sanatana Dharma, the Dharmic worldview, and let's say the Abrahamic religions? And most of all, in the hearts and minds of people, and in the architecture of society and nations, how do you think Abrahamic religions are different from Dharmic worldview?
Mm. Yeah, so I was raised in, the Catholic Church, very strongly in the Catholic Church from a young age and in Catholic school. So I was in that world for a very long time. And what I have understood from my experiences and studies is that, the Abrahamic religions are very, I would say, more dogmatic and set in the idea that there's one way, right? There's one path. And if you're not on that path, then you are going to be, damned to hell or to suffering, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas there's no such concept within Sanatana Dharma. And I think that in itself is very liberating for a lot of people to come out of that. I think it's very centered in fear, the Abrahamic faiths, a lot of them. And I think a lot of people rebel against their religion, being raised in these faiths, because their context is very much based in fear and based in a separation of ourselves from God and ourselves from one another also as other human beings. Whereas within Hinduism, that concept doesn't exist, and it is all about respect for all life, oneness, and acceptance of, a multitude of paths within even the umbrella of Hinduism. There's an acceptance of so many different forms of devotion or belief. There's not one way. And I think that in itself is very, very empowering. And also that this is how I sometimes explain it, is that, Hinduism accepts all religions. All religions don't accept Hinduism. And I think that's what is drawing more and more people that are awakening spiritually into it, because it is inclusive and so respectful of all beliefs, but sadly, the same thing doesn't necessarily reflect in other faiths. I wish that it did. And that's not to say that there aren't beautiful people who are in those faiths and a part of those faiths, right? Or who are finding something fulfilling in them. But I think the system and the structure and the organization of them has undergone a lot of corruption over the years and been used as a tool of colonialism worldwide as well, and colonization of lots of indigenous traditions and faiths, which is intertwined, and I think in that ideology.
Mm-hmm. Right. You spoke about how Abrahamic religions are sort of based on fear, if I'm not misquoting you, and how they sort of separate individuals from one another and from God as well. Do you have some examples that would help me and our audience sort of understand it better?
Yes. So one of the fundamental concepts within Christianity is the idea of sin, right? Mm-hmm. And that we are born, as babies, we're born evil. There's something innately wrong with us as human beings, that we've already been born into sin. Mm-hmm. So it's like the starting point is already so different from Hinduism, because it's telling us from the get-go that something is wrong with our nature, and it creates so much incompletion and suffering in us. And I've experienced personally that how much that affects your beliefs about yourself and life as you go through life. There's so much guilt associated with that, so much unnecessary self-hatred, and fear that does lurk in your inner space when you're constantly hearing these concepts affirmed and spoken about, and that, if you don't repent, and the concept of hell and the devil, and all of these things are very much based in we should choose the right thing out of fear of punishment versus understanding the Dharma and why we would want to do the right thing or our duty, because we understand the context that, you know, what we put out comes back to us, and right, all of these type of, you know, cosmic spiritual principles, instead of this idea that we have to be doing something or else, you know. I think that that in itself is one. And a lot of the foundation of that too, right, is also that concept that we are told all the time we are sinners, and we never reach any type of state of enlightenment or state of God consciousness that you might have seen described in Eastern traditions. So again, there's that really strong separation between the divine and who I am. And it's emphasized really strongly, and it creates, you know, a totally different identity about who we are, right, in this world and why we're here versus within Hinduism.
Right. Prasiddha, moving on to yoga.
Mm.
Most people in the West sort of commercialize and double down on yoga, dumbing down on yoga. And they really do not have a clue about what the essence of it really is. And could you help us understand and help our Western viewers understand what yoga is really about and how it should be approached by practitioners who really want to get the most out of it?
Yes. Yes, I always love this conversation, you know, because and luckily it's starting to be more popular. You know, like now these discussions are happening. I'm seeing them happen in more platforms, which is great. But yeah, so yoga is in essence, you know, a Hindu ritual to connect directly to the divine within our own bodies. So it is a very, you know, spiritual, ritualistic practice which connects us to source, you know, whether that's the form of Shiva, whether that's Krishna, whether that's Shakti, or whether that's a formless kind of Brahman, whatever that force is for us,
Mm-hmm.
that is open. But the fundamental principle of yoga is understanding we have consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
understanding that consciousness can connect to the universal or supreme consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
and that while, you know, doing the practice, that is our intention.
Mm-hmm.
So it's in essence uniting, you know, connecting directly, you know, with the divine, and you know, letting that flood into our consciousness and our body. And ultimately the path is for entering these higher states of samadhi, or, you know, enlightenment states. So it's a very fundamentally you can't strip it, you know, from that essence. But it of course has been tried to be, you know, stripped away from that in the West.
Mm-hmm.
But the beautiful thing is, my guru always says that yoga is it's an independent intelligence. It will always lead you to a higher knowledge. So I think that even when you dip your toes in, and if you're just practicing asana or something, eventually it's going to pull you into, you know, something deeper. It's going to pull you into the Yoga Sutras, and then you're going to discover, wow, there's pranayama and there's like meditation and all these different aspects. Oh, it's a whole lifestyle. Like it's the way we live, it's the way we think.
Mm-hmm.
And you start to get into more and more depth with it and understand it really is this comprehensive, you know, path in itself, not just that practice on the mat.
Is this what inspired you to get into yoga and start practicing the way of life?
Yes, yes, absolutely. I think definitely just I never connected to it, to be honest, in the West. Like I never really did yoga over here. I never, which I'm actually really grateful for, because I didn't have any diluted start to it really. Like I never went to a gym or to a studio. I started doing it when I was in India. So that was a blessing, because I was like, wow, this is what it is, you know, and I knew, and I was having these profound, unexplainable experiences
Mm-hmm.
doing yoga that I never would have thought I could do
Mm-hmm.
physically and also consciously, like in states of meditation and things that I was experiencing while doing these authentic yoga practices, of course, under initiation from a guru, also, right? And part of that lineage, which is a big part of the yogic tradition. And that is really what, awakened that passion in me, for the lifestyle, and seeing the sannyasis in our sangha and how they all operate was so inspiring, how much they embody that, um, especially ahimsa and, asteya and satya and all the different values so purely, was just so inspiring for me. And I knew that was my ultimate to, embody. That was what I sought to embody in this lifetime. So I was very inspired to, dive deep into the tradition.
That's incredible. And speaking about the yogic life, an essential part of it is what we eat and how we eat, right?
Mm.
And Ayurvedic traditions are, in this regard, considered important as a guide of providing how you eat and what you eat so that your body feels what you eat. And the ongoing pandemic has encouraged many people to sort of rediscover the importance of food and the
Mm.
relationship of health and a happy life to food. Again, for our Western viewers, could you explain what Ayurveda is and what the benefits of Ayurveda are?
Yes. So Ayurveda is translated to the science of life. It's primarily a way we can heal and prevent diseases and disorders from occurring in our body and our mind and our consciousness, all three. So it's a beautiful system, very, very detailed, and the most ancient medicine system in the world. It was the foundation of all medicine we see today. And it is all about healing holistically, including, that everything is connected. And we can't isolate, the body from the mind or vice
Right.
versa. And a lot of the healing happens through natural substances and herbs and diet and lifestyle and yoga therapies and external therapies, but none of which have these, severe side effects like we see with modern medicine. So it's a very beautiful, harmonious way to heal the body. And yes, a huge part of it is diet. If not 99% of all healing really does come down to the food that we're putting in our body.
Mhm.
And, when we have a healthy gut, everything else is healthy also. So that principle is very central in yoga and Ayurveda, and they tie together, of course, like sister sciences. Yoga is really, I would say, at least how I understand it, is that yoga is, when it comes to food and diet, it's much more niche in the sense that, it's made for those intense spiritual seekers, because yoga is that path of seeking, that divine connection, whereas Ayurveda was for everybody. It's to heal everybody, no matter if they are, your average Joe, or if they're maybe a little bit spiritual, maybe they're a lot spirit, anyone on the spectrum. It's that medicine system for healing. So it incorporates more options, like, sattvic diet is there, but also like people who eat meat, we have to tell them maybe what's the best option. If they're not going to stop eating that, what's the best option, right? So we have to work with them as patients. But in the yogic path, we understand that sattvic diet is the ultimate, that, of course, vegetarianism and non-violence, ahimsa, is like the ultimate value to live with our diet as well. And even in Ayurveda, that is acknowledged too. But also, of course, there are different, cases in which different types of foods and substances are used for healing.
Mhm. We talked about the dharmic inheritance, such as yoga and Ayurveda, but of course, there's so much more to it. And since 2014, for various reasons, after Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji came into power, we have seen this huge shift towards a dharmic renaissance, if I would put it that way.
Mm.
Why is it this case, and why does a revitalized Bharat, in other words, for an India attuned Bharat, matter to India and more so to the world?
I think that, yeah, I think more even to the world, really, because it's so much bigger than just India. But I truly believe that the way the world will heal is through Sanatana Dharma, and that doesn't just mean, everybody who understands being a Hindu, because it's so much bigger than that, but the whole principles and values, the way of life, the way that the even civilization can be structured regarding all of these values, and it's so genius. Like there's so much genius in all of it, and I truly believe that it's going to absolutely have a renaissance and revitalization, because you see everybody is starting to wake up to how unsustainable our lifestyles have become, how much we are hurting the earth, how much there's still conflict between nations, and all of these things which didn't exist in Vedic civilization. They were in so much harmony with all of life. And so those values embodied, I think, are only going to, be showing that they knew and they understood something that we have forgotten. And I think that if India can reignite that type of civilization, surely they're going to be the leaders of the world in that front. I hope that they can embody that and embrace that again. And it would be beautiful to see. And I think that it's going to expand, even outside of course, outside of India and into the greater world. If we want to see an inhabitable planet, I really do think that that's the way it's going to happen.
Right. Dharmic traditions have offered so much to the world historically, and it can make the modern world so much more kinder and better and more evolved. If I mean personally, and yet these ideas that and beliefs and technologies, say, for instance, Ayurveda or yoga or Murti Puja, these
Mm.
traditions that are centered in the dharmic way of living, they often get deliberately disregarded or disintegrated by a lot of people, especially in the current popular culture that we have. What I would like to ask you is, why does this happen when there is a belief, when there is a system that can make human animal world life so much more better than what it is right now? Why is it that some people do try to intentionally denigrate it?
Mm. Yeah, I think that's where the concept of conspiracy becomes reality, because there is no explanation for it other than the truth of what it is, which is that for hundreds of years now, there's been an intentional suppression of dharmic way of life and intentional destruction of the culture, the society, the family values, and all of the associated aspects of Hinduism by vested interests that were looking to originally, right, of course, colonize India. It was such a powerful, extremely unbreakable civilization
Mhm.
that could not have been destroyed unless they could figure out a way to destroy it from the inside. And that's exactly what they did. It was an evil genius, sadly, um, concept, because they couldn't, the people were so rooted in their spirituality and, community, that it was such a strong civilization and education system, all of those things, and very advanced in so many different ways, which we have evidence of.
Mhm.
And when the Portuguese, the British, and later the Mughals like came and invaded the country after so much intentional destruction, creation of the caste system to twist, Indian against Indian, and to destroy all of the education systems, the libraries, the schools, the gurukuls, totally slander all of the gurus and the Brahmin tradition. It's everything we're seeing now is just an aftermath of that. And people think that it happened a long time ago, but it's still happening. And the after effects are absolutely still being tasted, just like, for example, in the United States with slavery. It was not so long ago, and you can still see how predominant racism is in this country. And we like to think that it's far away, but it's not. And the same thing is happening, especially with Hinduism worldwide and these sciences of enlightenment, and especially regarding the guru disciple tradition. You can look anywhere to see how much propaganda is being spread to embarrass and humiliate and make people question or confuse their own faith and religion, or even cultural tradition through movies, television, and even our direct education systems that misteach Hinduism, that miscorrelate all of these, atrocities and completely misinterpret the scriptures as well. So much of our scripture has been absolutely incorrectly translated intentionally by people like Max Mueller and all of these other colonizers that came and have admitted to that, and still for some reason people are studying this and thinking that it's credible and correlating things that do not actually come from Hinduism. So I think there has been, sadly, a lot of spiritual warfare done against the tradition, and we're still having to face those repercussions and sadly use a lot of our energy to explain and defend constantly instead of just getting to share and enrich. And that's I think where the loss has been, because people have felt so depleted or uncomfortable with sharing about their faith nowadays, because like you were saying, so much of the secular movement has been it's not secular, it's just anti-Hindu, and honestly, that is what it is. And it's just getting so twisted, there's so much to say about it, but it's getting so twisted, and it's sad to see that, because I think if anybody actually took the time to directly read the scriptures or to study with a Swami, an authentic teacher, and to really understand the tradition, they would see what it is, which is extremely beautiful, extremely loving, accepting, nonviolent, and really respectful of all other traditions. So that's all.
Right. And in your view, is that also a reason why our gurus, such as Sri Ji or Sadhguruji, they are constantly being targeted, right? It's like people are intentionally trying to view them with a microscope, trying to find
Yeah.
faults which may not even be there, in order to just defame or make up allegations
Right.
against the Hindu Dharma. Do you think that's also a reason why it's happening?
Oh yes, 100%. I mean, I'm obviously not from India, but even being there for 2 years and being in and out of there for more years than that, um, I could see how insanely corrupt the media is there. And I mean, the United States is the same, but India is also very corrupt in terms of the media and representation, and there's only really one voice that you hear, and it's like the same cookie cutter story is told about every single guru, and you'll see that even throughout history. It's funny, it's like they haven't gotten creative, they keep the same mold
The same
of
narrative.
same narrative of defamation for all of these teachers. I mean, even from the time of like Jesus and Buddha, and now they're doing same thing to these guys, and it's extremely intentional. I think it's it's it is the war, against enlightenment, so to speak, because I think a lot of people who have a power in the world, who have money in the world, who have influence in the world, don't want to be threatened. And they know that a conscious type of awakening, spiritual awakening is a threat to that, that because it changes the paradigm of how we all live as a society. And so these masters who shake up the status quo, and who are, turning things upside down, so to speak, and changing around the way that we're doing things and making people uncomfortable, making people question if they want to just slave away at their desk all day, or if they want to just have a family and die, or if there's something more to life, and so they target them, and it works because it's really, really easy to play with people's emotions. It's really easy to, you tell a story that's emotional enough, and you'll get enough people to believe it. And that's exactly what they do with a lot of these masters. They tell the same narrative, they throw the same keywords around, and they get people to have doubt. And even that doubt is enough, because they don't need any evidence, and they never have the evidence. They just need the doubt. And they do a lot of destruction that way.
Right. As someone who loves India and Dharam, what do you think that Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji should do, and how do you see his role in making the Dharmic Renaissance even bigger than what it is right now?
I don't know who I am to advise Modi, but I would
I mean,
say
what is your personal, I mean, what would you like to see from our Prime
yes, yes.
Minister?
I would say all I would want to see is the courage, from not just him, but anybody
Mhm.
who understands what we're talking about and believes in it, to have the courage to boldly, stand up for it and not um, let the other forces win just because they're scaring us. And it is hard. You do face backlash on the internet and whatever there might be in the news and politics. There will be, right? People will have their opinions, but I think that if he and all of our leaders can uphold
Mhm.
these higher spiritual principles as the fundamentals for creating our nations or creating our different systems of government and laws that have in mind the benefit of all people, without discrimination, and more equality, more and more compassion and love, which is the fundamentals of Sanatana Dharma. I think we cannot go wrong.
Right, yes. And my final question to you is that there's this propaganda and mind manipulation of and against India. And I think since 2014, it has in fact increased, right? I mean, examples of us promoting International Yoga Day, right, is
Mm,
somehow evil, is somehow communal. Giving accelerated refugee citizenship rights to persecuted people, minorities from these Islamic
mm,
nations is somehow not a noble thing to do.
mm.
And you hear all of these propaganda just going on and increasing day by day over the tiniest of things. In your words, what advice could you give and would you like to give to young people who are out there in the world who are consuming all of this negativity and all of this, because all of these propagandas and narratives that are out there, they do create, a sense of anxiety or a sense of
Right.
negativity. So, what advice would you give to all the young people who are out there consuming all of this against India, against the current government, and of course, against the confident Hindu Renaissance? So, what would your
Right.
advice be?
I would honestly say, nowadays 2 eyes is not enough to see the reality. You have to use all 3 eyes. You have to see through the delusion and the illusions of the Maya that we're living in.
Mhm.
Just question your sources, question why you believe what you believe.
Mhm.
And you'll see that often it's simply because somebody else told you to believe it, right? And so I think for anyone young, no matter where they lived, I would tell them this, you know that you should really question who you're trusting and believing as your sources of information. There is enough evidence, that the mainstream media is not at all a truthful source of information. So I hope that anyone listening, whether they're older or younger, takes time to research these things on their own, really get a broad perspective on these topics
Mhm.
before coming to conclusions about anything, whether it's politics, religion, international news, whatever that it is,
Mhm.
and really take a step back, because you'll start to see the thread that connects a lot of these narratives
Mhm.
is all intertwined. And like you're saying, a lot of the current sentiments against India is it's when you really start to see it, you can see it clearly for what it is. I mean, I can give you one example too. One of my friends who runs a page was sharing that India gives out all these vaccines and for COVID, and that their numbers are going down. And the same article title saying like numbers in the US have gone down, sorry, numbers in New Zealand have gone down. Here's what they've been doing right. And then it says numbers in India have gone down. It's a mystery. Like they
Really?
so it's almost, they're always trying to play off India as if they're incompetent,
Mhm.
and that it's the fundamental narrative of this, colonizer mentality, still thinking that it's this white man's burden to judge, these different countries, and especially when it comes to India. And it's ridiculous that people have that arrogance. And so I hope people can see that we have absolutely no place to judge or to incorrectly label what other nations are doing when we have no context on what their government is, what their politics are, what life is like for them.
Mhm.
Americans really need to know that aspect, but also I'm sure other people as well. And I hope, again, just to question where you get your information, and truly see when you go to the sources, the actual, shastras, and you actually go into, temples, and you actually do these practices yourself, you you have the light of truth inside of you, because you're tapping in through your own practices and your own, spiritual principles. You can see things clearly for what they are, and you can understand the beauty of the tradition, even when there's all these outside voices telling you that that's not the case. So I hope that, more and more people and kids are inspired to reconnect.
That's such a beautiful way to put it. And just to follow up, how do you really start? In the sense that where do you start with? If you want to tap into this energy, where is it that you start?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many places. I would say meditation obviously is a huge one. Sitting with yourself in meditation is so important, for so many dimensions of life, and understanding and really knowing your identity outside of whatever anybody is telling you,
Mhm.
and tapping into your personal divine connection. Even practices like puja and going to temple can really help tap you into that space too. Just being in that energy field with these higher beings is really inspiring, more than people realize. And of course, yoga practices as well, all the different dimensions and limbs of yoga included in that. And I think tapping back in, getting back into, maybe reading some scriptures like Bhagavad Gita or the Upanishad, something which can really start giving you a glimpse at what this, how vast and powerful this science really is. And I think ultimately, to be honest, the most beneficial thing and easiest way to learn in a empowering way and a truthful way is to follow a master, follow a guru who is authentic, because things don't get lost in translation when you have a guide like that on your path, and that's why they've always existed. So it really helps to maintain the authenticity and inspiration when you're going through the spiritual path.
Thank you so much, Prasiddhaji. It was lovely talking to you, and I think right now I'm already in that energy with you. I mean, it just feels wonderful. So thank you so much. And to all our viewers, please like, subscribe, and share. And we will be back with another insightful conversation on FOB. Thank you so much. Namaste.
Thank you.
Namaste. We hope you enjoyed this Citti Media content. Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.